The doorbell rings at 2 a.m. I don't answer. Through the peephole, I can see my aunt shifting her weight from foot to foot, clutching her purse like it holds the solution to everything. She's been calling for 3 days straight. Different numbers. Each time, the flower shop, the pizza place, even the veterinary clinic. She thinks I'm stupid enough to fall for it twice. Behind her, I can make out my older sister's silhouette in the car, engine running. They drove 4 hours to get here. 4 hours to ask me to come back and take care of the woman who spent 15 years proving I didn't belong. I watched them wait. I watched them leave. My name is Adeline. I'm 24 and I've learned that the cruelest thing you can do to someone who made you invisible is to stay that way. Grandma Evelyn always said the ring chose its bearer. I found the old photo tucked inside her jewelry box after the funeral, 1959, black and white, 3 daughters lined up by height. Mom was the tallest, so she got the university ring. The middle daughter got a pat on the head. The youngest got nothing but a warning that weakness runs in families and needed to be cut out early. This ring never leaves the bloodline of the strong ones. Grandma had written on the back in her perfect cursive. Mom took that lesson and ran with it. The ring became her religion. Every year on Christmas, she'd give replica rings to my sisters, smaller versions of Grandma's original, but still heavy, still significant. I got practical gifts. Socks. School supplies. Once, a first aid kit. Adeline doesn't need jewelry, she'd say, not looking at me. She needs to learn how the real world works. I was 9 when I realized some families have favorites. I was 12 when I understood I wasn't one of them. But it took me until 15 to figure out that being unwanted was actually a gift. It just took a while to unwrap it. The ring wasn't about love. It was about control. And you can't control someone who stops caring about the ring. My childhood was lived in margins, not the dramatic kind where parents scream and throw things. The quiet kind where you're always standing slightly outside the family photo, where your voice gets talked over at dinner, where your birthday cake is whatever flavor your sisters prefer because it's easier to buy one. Mom had this way of introducing us that made everything clear. These are my daughters. Sarah, she's pre-med, Jessica, she's studying journalism, and Adeline. No accomplishments. No future plans. Just Adeline, like I was an afterthought that happened to live in the same house. The ring ceremony happened every Christmas Eve. Sarah got hers at 16, a beautiful replica of Grandma's original university ring, sized perfectly for her finger. Jessica got hers at 17, because she'd proven herself academically. They'd wear them to church, to family gatherings, spinning them proudly while Mom beamed. When I turned 16, I got wool socks and a lecture about practical gifts for practical girls. Rings are for daughters who understand their worth. Mom said, not looking up from her crossword. Maybe next year, but next year never came. The year after that didn't either. I started collecting the scraps of family photos where I'd been cut off, literally cut with scissors when Mom made her scrapbooks. I had dozens of them. My shoulder at Sarah's graduation, my elbow at Jessica's engagement party, the edge of my dress at family Christmas. I kept them in a shoebox under my bed, evidence of a pattern I was too young to name. Sarah caught me looking at them once. She laughed, not mean, exactly, but not kind either. You're so weird, Adeline. Why do you keep those? I couldn't explain it then. Now I know. I was documenting my own erasure before I had the vocabulary for it. I was learning, frame by frame, that love in our house was conditional, rationed, and I was the daughter who didn't make the cut. But those socks? I learned to darn them, to make them last. Those practical gifts taught me skills my sisters never learned. While they were polishing their rings, I was teaching myself to be useful in ways that didn't require anyone's approval. Years later, when I was living on my own, mending clothes for extra money, I realized Mom had been right about one thing: practical gifts for practical girls. She just hadn't realized she was training me to survive without her. The messages started when I was 12. At first, I thought it was spam, explicit photos from numbers I didn't recognize. Comments about my body that made my stomach turn. I blocked them, deleted them, said nothing. But they kept coming from new numbers, getting more specific, more graphic. Should have known Mom was watching. She always positioned herself where she could see my phone screen during homework time. The timing was too perfect, every notification seemed to arrive exactly when she was in the room. The breaking point was a Tuesday. I was doing algebra at the kitchen table when another message popped up, this one with a photo so disgusting I dropped my phone. Mom immediately stopped stirring her coffee. What was that, asterisk, she asked, but not like she was concerned. Like she was waiting, nothing. Spam, show me. Her tone left no room for argument. I handed over the phone with shaking hands, watching her scroll through weeks of harassment. She didn't look shocked. She looked satisfied. Well, she said finally, at least we know you react like a normal girl. The room went cold. What? I was worried. She handed the phone back casually. You never talk about boys, never seem interested. I needed to make sure you weren't different. You did this, I had a friend test you. You passed. She went back to her coffee like we'd just discussed the weather. Your sisters didn't need testing. They were obvious from the start. But you. She shrugged. You hide everything. How was I supposed to know if you were normal? I sat there, staring at the algebra problems that suddenly seemed like kindergarten math compared to the equation of my mother's cruelty. She had orchestrated weeks of sexual harassment to test my sexuality. She had turned my private space into her laboratory. If you were like your sisters, she continued, I wouldn't have to worry so much. I saved every message after that. Screenshots, phone numbers, dates, and times. I created a folder labeled Science Project and backed it up to 3 different email accounts. I was 12 years old, learning to build my own evidence file. When my sisters complained about Mom being overprotective, I said nothing. When they rolled their eyes about her hovering, I archived another screenshot. They got protection. I got experimentation, but I also got something they didn't. I learned that normal was a weapon people used against you, and the only defense was refusing to explain yourself. They could test me all they wanted. I'd never give them the satisfaction of a reaction again. Asterisk, the science fair was supposed to be my moment. Been working on a project about plant growth in different soil conditions for weeks. Nothing groundbreaking, but solid, careful work. The kind of project that earned B+ grades and teacher nods of approval. Safe. Invisible. The way I'd learned to be. Mom insisted on coming. She never came to my school events, but suddenly she was interested in my little plant project. I should have known better. She lasted exactly 20 minutes before the performance started. First, she complained loudly about the smell of fertilizer. Then she started touching other students' projects, asking inappropriate questions, making the volunteers uncomfortable. When Mrs. Peterson politely asked her to lower her voice, Mom's eyes went glassy. I don't feel well, she announced, swaying dramatically. The stress. Adeline, you're giving me chest pains. The entire gymnasium went quiet. Parents turned to stare. My chemistry teacher rushed over with a chair. Mom collapsed into it, hand pressed to her forehead like she was starring in a Victorian melodrama. I can't breathe, she gasped. This environment, the pressure, what you're putting me through. She was looking directly at me when she said it, making sure everyone knew whose fault this was. An ambulance was called. Paramedics checked her vitals while she moaned about ungrateful daughters and the stress of raising difficult children. I stood frozen by my plant exhibit, watching my mother turn my one school achievement into her medical emergency. The paramedics found nothing wrong. Her blood pressure was perfect. Her heart rate was normal. But by then, the damage was done. The science fair was over for me. Parents whispered. Teachers looked at me with a mixture of pity and suspicion, drove home in silence. Hope you learned something today, she said as we pulled into the driveway. What? Actions have consequences. Your selfishness affects this whole family. I went to my room and wrote the letter that night. Not in anger, anger would have made it weak. I wrote it with the cold precision of someone finally understanding the rules of the game. Mom, thank you for today. You showed me exactly what this family is, and exactly what I'm not. You turned my school project into your medical drama because you couldn't stand me having one thing that wasn't about you. You've spent years proving I don't belong here. Message received. I'm not running away. I'm accepting your invitation to leave. You've made it clear that 3 daughters is too many, so now you have 2. The ones you actually wanted. Don't look for me. Don't call the police. I'm not missing. I'm free. Consider this my graduation from the family that never wanted me to graduate. Adeline P.S. You taught me that family is optional. Thank you for the lesson. I left the letter taped to the refrigerator, packed a backpack with essentials and the evidence folder I'd been building for years, and walked out the front door at 5 a.m. No one tried to stop me. No one called. No one cared. But for the first time in 15 years, no one was testing me, cutting me out of photos, or making me invisible either. Had learned the difference between being thrown away and walking away. One makes you trash. The other makes you free. *9. Years later, I saw their happiness by accident. Sarah's wedding popped up on my Instagram Explore page. Algorithm mistake, wrong hashtag, something. There they were, Mom in navy blue, Jessica in burgundy, Sarah in white. All wearing their rings. All smiling like they'd won the lottery. The caption under Mom's post read, "My girls. Thank you, God, for blessing me with daughters who never gave up on family." I stared at that photo for 20 minutes. Not because it hurt, I was surprised to find it didn't. But because I was fascinated by how perfect they looked without me. Like I had never existed at all. Like the family portrait had always been meant for 3. The comments were the usual wedding nonsense. Beautiful family. Raised them right. You must be so proud. But one comment caught my attention. Aunt Linda, Mom's sister * without the drama queen, everything flows so much better. You finally got the family you deserved. I screenshot that comment. Not for evidence this time. For clarity, I walked to my kitchen, opened my laptop, and ordered a print of their perfect family photo. When it arrived 3 days later, I took scissors and carefully cut out the space where I would have been standing. Just empty air between Jessica and the wall. I framed that empty space and hung it in my coffee shop. Customers ask about it sometimes. Is that supposed to be art? They say, pointing at the carefully framed void. It's about negative space, I tell them. Sometimes what's missing is more powerful than what's there. They nod like they understand modern art. They have no idea they're looking at the most honest family portrait ever created. Sarah had 3 bridesmaids, college friends, sorority sisters, girls who barely knew her before freshman year. Jessica gave a speech about Mom's unconditional love and guidance. The pastor talked about family bonds that can never be broken, watched it all through screenshots and saved stories. An anthropologist studying a culture I used to live in. They had created their own mythology, the family that overcame hardship, the mother who held everyone together, the daughters who appreciated everything they had. The only hardship they'd overcome was me. And they'd done it by forgetting I existed. I wasn't bitter. I was impressed. They had committed so completely to the revision that I almost believed it myself. Almost wondered if I had imagined 15 years of exclusion and cruelty, but then I remembered the ring I never got, the photos I was cut out of, the messages Mom orchestrated, the science fair she sabotaged. The evidence folder I still kept. Not for revenge, but for reality. They could edit me out of their story, but they couldn't edit me out of my own life. And my life, it turned out, was pretty good without them. I liked the empty space in that frame. It reminded me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to fill a space where you were never really wanted. The call came from Aunt Linda's number, but I almost didn't answer. I'd blocked most of the family years ago, but somehow I'd missed hers. Adeline, *, the voice was shaky, unfamiliar, Asterisk, this is your Aunt Marie. Hadn't heard from Aunt Marie in a decade. She was Mom's youngest sister, the one who'd gotten nothing from Grandma Evelyn except warnings about weakness. How did you get this number? I got it from Linda. Adeline, we need to talk about your mother, and why coffee went cold in my hands. What? About her. She's been diagnosed with early onset dementia. Not severe yet, but she needs care. Linda and I, we're too old, and your sisters, she paused. Your sisters have their own families now. Young children. They can't take her. I waited. We're hoping you could be part of a care rotation. Nothing permanent, just, no Adeline, please. She's still your mother, is she? I set down my coffee and opened the recording app on my phone. Tell me, Aunt Marie, what exactly makes her my mother? Because I have 15 years of evidence suggesting. Otherwise, you can't still be angry about. I'm not angry. I'm free. There's a difference. She needs help. She needed help 15 years ago. Professional help. Instead, she got enablers who thought it was easier to sacrifice one daughter than hold her accountable. Marie's voice cracked. We're family. You taught me that family is conditional. That love has to be earned. That some daughters matter more than others. I was amazed at how calm I sounded. Well, I learned the lesson. And I learned it well. What am I supposed to tell your sisters? Tell them the truth. Tell them you called the daughter you spent years teaching that she didn't belong. And you asked her to come back and take care of the woman who made her childhood a psychological experiment. That's not fair. Asterisk, I laughed, actually laughed. Aunt Marie, do you remember Mom's 50th birthday party? The one where Jessica gave that speech about family loyalty and Sarah talked about all the sacrifices Mom made? Do you remember who wasn't invited? Silence, asterisk, or Christmas 2018, when you all posted those photos of the whole family gathered around Mom's tree? Do you remember who was editing me out of every frame before you posted them? Adeline, I do, asterisk, I remember all of it. Every exclusion, every casual cruelty, every time you all chose comfort over justice. And now you want me to forget it all because suddenly I'm useful. I ended the recording and saved it to 3 different cloud accounts. Here's what I'm going to do, Aunt Marie. I'm going to hang up now. And if any of you call again, if any of you show up at my business, if any of you try to guilt me through church friends or distant relatives, I'm going to post this entire conversation online with context. All of it. The ring tradition, the harassment, the exclusion, the way you all stood by and watched it happen. You wouldn't, I would. Because unlike the rest of you, I learned to document everything. And unlike the woman who raised me, I don't bluff. I hung up and immediately blocked her number. Then I did something I'd never done before, asterisk, I shared the recording in a group text with both my sisters, Aunt Linda and Aunt Marie. My message was simple, asterisk, since you all coordinated to call me, I thought you should coordinate to remember what you said. Save this, you might need it later when you're wondering why I don't visit. Within an hour, Jessica sent me an audio message. I could hear her crying before she even started talking. Adeline, I know you won't respond to this, but I need to say it. I remember things differently now. I remember you collecting those photo scraps. I remember Mom's science fair performance. I remember thinking it was normal because it was all I knew. Her voice cracked. I was a coward. I saw what was happening. And I chose to be grateful it wasn't happening to me. I'm so sorry. I know sorry isn't enough, but it's all I have. I saved the message but didn't reply. Some apologies are gifts for the person giving them, not the person receiving them. That evening, I turned off my phone and went back to work. A customer at table 6 asked if everything was okay. You look different, she said. Lighter, somehow. I smiled, genuinely smiled. For the first time in weeks, I just remembered something important, I told her. Family isn't who raised you. It's who shows up when you need them. She nodded like that made perfect sense. It did. It finally did, asterisk, the message came through email this time. A therapist. Dr. Sarah Martinez. She said my sister Jessica had given her my contact. That Jessica had been struggling since I sent the recording to the family group. That she was having nightmares. Remembering things differently now, I didn't respond. But I didn't delete it either. 3 days later, Dr. Martinez called again. She said Jessica was trying to understand what happened. That she claimed she was too young. That she hadn't realized the weight of everything back then. I corrected her gently. She didn't want to realize. She was there. She saw it. The therapist said Jessica looked away because it was easier than seeing what was real. That part, I believed. She told me Jessica had brought a box. Screenshots. Photos. Printouts of messages. Jessica had said I kept everything. I confirmed it. I did. Dr. Martinez asked me why. I told her, because I knew one day, someone would try to rewrite it. She said Jessica was trying to take accountability. I said, no. She's trying to manage guilt. She asked if I'd meet with her. I told her I didn't need to. That I had already healed. That I didn't need guilt to validate my memory. Then she paused. Quiet. Respectful, she asked how I survived it all. I told her, by remembering. By documenting. By refusing to become what they said I was. She said Jessica wanted to apologize. I told her she could. Just not to me. She asked if she could relay that. I said she could tell Jessica this. Healing doesn't always come with reunions. Sometimes it comes with distance. When we hung up, I opened the folder one last time. I sent Dr. Martinez everything. And I wrote, this is for Jessica's therapy, not mine. I don't need her apology. Show her what she ignored. Show her who I became without her. That's all. I never heard back. 2 weeks later, I received a single message from Jessica. It said, I know sorry isn't enough. But it's all I have. I didn't reply. Some things don't need answers. Some chapters just need to close softly, completely, and without an echo. The ring appeared on eBay 3 months ago, not a replica, the original. Grandma Evelyn's 1959 university ring, the one that was supposed to stay in the bloodline of the strong ones. The seller was listed as estate sale, elderly care. Liquidation. I recognized it immediately from the family photos I'd been cut out of. Heavy gold band, class seal worn smooth from decades of being twisted during moments of stress. The ring that had defined worthiness in our family for 3 generations. Starting bid, $50. Watched the auction for 6 days. No family members bid. Maybe they didn't know it was for sale. Maybe they couldn't afford it. Maybe they finally understood that symbols only have the power you give them. With 30 seconds left, I placed a bid, $127. I won. When it arrived, I held it for exactly 1 minute. Felt its weight. Remembered the Christmas mornings when my sisters got their replicas and I got practical gifts. Remembered Mom spinning it on her finger while she explained why I wasn't worthy of wearing one. Then I walked to my coffee shop and dropped it into the tip jar. The sign I made was simple, tips optional, like family. Customers love it. They think it's quirky small business humor. They tip generously and ask about the ring floating among the bills and coins. Family heirloom, I tell them. It used to represent who belonged. Now it pays for coffee beans. They nod and smile like that makes perfect sense. Yesterday, an elderly man recognized my last name. I know your mother, he said. Sweet woman. Lives in Sunset Manor now. Talks about her daughters all the time. He was waiting for me to ask how she was, to send regards, to play the role of the caring daughter. Instead, I handed him his coffee and pointed to the tip jar. Family is optional, I said. But caffeine is essential. He laughed uncomfortably and left a $5 tip. After he left, I pulled out my phone and looked up Sunset Manor's website. Mom's photo was in the activities section, smiling in a craft circle, surrounded by other residents. The caption read, Eleanor enjoys art therapy and talks fondly of her daughters. I stared at that photo for a long time. Not with sadness or anger or regret. With anthropological curiosity. She looked diminished. Smaller than the woman who had loomed so large in my childhood. Just another elderly person in a care facility, making small talk with strangers about children who may or may not visit. I closed the website and went back to work that evening. I received a friend request on Facebook from someone named David Chen. His profile showed he was a social worker at Sunset Manor. His message was brief: "Your mother mentions you sometimes. She says she wishes she could talk to you. I'm not asking you to visit, but if you ever want to send a message through me, I'd be happy to deliver it." I stared at that message for an hour. Thought about all the things I could say. All the questions I could ask. All the closure I could seek. Instead, I deleted the message without responding. Some stories don't need endings. They just need to stop. I looked at the ring floating in the tip jar, surrounded by crumpled bills and loose change. Tomorrow, someone would buy coffee with money that included pieces of my family's legacy. The ring that was supposed to represent bloodline and worthiness would become part of a transaction between strangers. Later that week, I discovered something that made me laugh out loud in my empty coffee shop. A customer had mentioned seeing the ring online before I bought it, and when I asked more questions, the truth came out. It wasn't Mom who had sold the ring. It was Aunt Linda. She'd liquidated it along with other family jewelry to pay for Mom's medical bills. Not out of malice, but because the objects no longer held meaning for anyone. The family symbols that had once defined worthiness had become just metal and stones, sold to cover the cost of care. The ring was just metal. Who came up short were them. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Sarah. Jessica gave me your number. We know we can't fix what we did, but we want you to know we understand now. We're sorry." I typed and deleted a dozen responses. Finally settled on, "Understood. Take care." Then I blocked the number. I flipped the sign on my coffee shop door too. Closed and sat in the quiet space I'd built for myself. The empty picture frame caught the last light from the street lamp outside. The ring caught the reflection of the vintage bulbs I'd hung above the counter. A family of my own choosing. Coffee beans and quiet customers, empty frames and optional tips. People who chose me because they wanted to, not because they had to. Through the window, I could see people walking by, strangers who might become customers, customers who might become friends, friends who might become the family I was still learning to choose. The ring caught the light one more time, transformed from symbol of exclusion to instrument of generosity. From inheritance of pain to tool of hope. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. But that doesn't mean you can't build new ones, better ones, with people who see your worth without requiring proof. I stayed quiet. They noticed eventually, but by then I was already at peace. If this story felt like yours. Remember this: you don't owe anyone a second chance at the cost of your peace. You don't need to explain the silence they caused. You don't have to go back to places that erased. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay gone.